Family Guy tried to play this as a joke, but when you line up every single thing Quagmire has done to women, what you get isn't a punchline, it's a horror timeline wearing a laugh track. Quagmire's entire character is built on one idea: the creepy neighbor who never saw a boundary he didn't want to cross. Quagmire stops being sleazy and starts looking criminal the second you line his actions up in order. His timeline predator the universe keeps letting walk. It starts with Meg. From the start, Quagmire's obsession with Meg isn't a goofy crush. It's a grown man secretly recording a minor in the bathroom, and she's disturbingly unsurprised, already numb to being dehumanized. Her age is the only flimsy barrier between him and what he really wants, and the show makes it clear he's just waiting for that barrier to vanish.
Your 18th birthday, Meg. That's a very important milestone in a young woman's life.
The moment Meg turns 18, Quagmire swoops in like he's been circling her birthday on the calendar for years. Meg's parents try to throw her a party, and it's one of the saddest things in the series. No one shows up, not a single kid from school. They even try bribing people to attend, and they still can't convince anyone to come. Meg, on her own birthday, ends up abandoned by everyone, emotionally flatlined by years of neglect. And that's when Quagmire shows up at the door. On the surface, it almost looks like a sweet gesture. He brings a scented candle, acts like he's there just to make her feel special, and for a split second you might think, okay, maybe this is one of those rare, decent Quagmire moments. But then he immediately pivots into something far darker. He emphasizes that this is her 18th birthday, a very important milestone, and the way he almost corrects himself from girl to woman says everything. He's not interested in Meg as a person. He's interested in the legal technicality that lets him justify what he already wanted to do. He starts touching her, lingering a bit too long, clearly crossing lines Meg is too numb and starved for affection to fully push back against. She doesn't react with shock or anger or fear, she just looks resigned. Like this is her default expectation of how people treat her. It's chilling because Quagmire isn't just some random predator. He's someone her parents know, someone who's been around her for years. Peter, instead of doing the obvious thing and stepping in immediately, actually sits there watching and comments on his own daughter in the worst way possible.
Look at Quagmire hitting on that skank.
Calling her a skank. Only after that does he finally flip into protective dad mode, teaming up with Brian to throw Quagmire out like the house is on fire. That sudden shift from zero concern to full outrage shows exactly how messed up the dynamic is. Meg's safety is almost an afterthought. But of course, Quagmire doesn't stop there. That same night, he texts Meg, and not for something innocent like, "Hey, I left my jacket at your house." He's actively trying to keep the connection going. Think about how twisted that is. This is his best friend's daughter, someone he's known since she was a kid, and he's texting her after hours like she's just another woman he met at a bar. He makes small talk, even dragging Farmville into it just to keep her engaged. And shockingly, Meg starts getting interested. That's the tragic part. After a lifetime of rejection, she's willing to overlook the age gap and the red flags because for once, someone is giving her attention. Then he shows up for their hangout with a bouquet of flowers. At this point, it's not even pretending to be subtle. This isn't a friendly visit, it's a date, and he's treating it like one. Lois, of all people, encourages Meg to go, not because she thinks Quagmire is safe, but because she understands Meg is using this to provoke her parents.
Nothing's gonna happen, don't you see? She's only doing this to get a rise out of us.
That means everyone knows this is a terrible idea, and yet they all let it happen. The show turns it into comedy, but when viewed as a timeline, it's basically a whole neighborhood failing a vulnerable girl. The dinner goes about how you'd expect. Quagmire behaves like a love-struck teenager trapped in a grown man's body, but with way more experience and way worse intentions. Then he pushes it a step further and invites Meg back to his place. She actually agrees to go with him but stops short of going inside, offering a small kiss instead and heading home. That should have been the end of his shot. She drew a line, but Quagmire can't leave it there. Suddenly, the two of them are spooning on the couch. There's no ambiguity now. This is a relationship, or at least Quagmire is treating it like one. The visual of a grown man cuddling a high school girl on the Griffin family couch crosses from edgy humor to something that would absolutely land someone on a registry in the real world. Peter literally has to use his own body as a shield to keep Quagmire away from Meg, but even that doesn't stop him. He keeps inserting himself into her life, fully aware she's still in school, still a teenager, as everything creeps toward the infamous cabin trip. Quagmire takes Meg to his cabin, which he more or less sells as the stuff-it-in getaway. Everything about the plan is aggressive. Isolated location, late-night vibe, parents scrambling to catch up. Peter and Lois realize what's happening and rush after them, clearly terrified that their daughter is about to make a mistake she can't undo. At the cabin, things escalate in the creepiest way possible. Their shadows appear on the wall, undressing each other. It's the show's way of implying intimacy without explicitly showing it, but the implication is clear. Quagmire is seconds away from taking Meg's virginity. And the thing is, the script constantly reminds you she's technically a consenting adult, while also making it brutally obvious this is a power imbalance, not a romance. Peter and Lois burst in at the last second, stopping everything right before that line is officially crossed. Meg pushes back, arguing that she's an adult and can make her own decisions. Peter, for once, takes the correct stance, telling her that yes, she might be legally an adult, but she's still his daughter, and part of his job is protecting her from predatory men like Quagmire.
Maybe an adult, but you're still my daughter. And it's my job to protect you from errant wieners. So I don't care how old you are, you're gonna do what I say and get in the damn car!
Lois goes directly at Glenn, threatening to mutilate him if he ever comes near Meg again. The message is loud. Everyone sees what he did here for what it is, taking advantage of a girl who's barely legal and emotionally vulnerable. And yet the timeline doesn't stop there, because Quagmire's behavior toward young women keeps getting worse. Next comes Kira. Quagmire meets her at one of Peter's parties. She looks young, suspiciously young, but she claims to be 23. And Quagmire, being exactly the type of guy who doesn't ask follow-up questions, accepts that at face value. Lois briefly steps in and shuts things down, but not before Kira and Quagmire end up leaving together. The episode frames it like everything's technically above board. She said she was of age, he believed her, and they went home together, but that setup is deliberately fragile. The next morning, the situation flips from sleazy to outright criminal. Clothes are scattered everywhere. Kira is mostly naked, lying on top of Quagmire in bed. He's basking in the afterglow, clearly satisfied with his night. And then she drops the bomb. She's actually a high school student.
What the hell? You said you were 23!
Yeah, and you said you love me.
Not an almost graduated college girl. Not someone who lied by a year or two. She is underage, and suddenly everything that happened that night becomes something else entirely. Quagmire reacts with shock at first, but the scene quickly tilts back into dark humor. When the police show up asking if he had sex with this underage girl, he doesn't deny it. He doesn't even hesitate. He basically admits to it just for the bragging rights. His ego, his need to be that guy, is more important to him than his freedom. Then, in the most self-incriminating move possible, he mentions sending pictures of her from the night before to all his friends. He's literally distributing visual evidence of a crime to his entire contact list. And yes, one of those contacts is a cop. That's when the reality of the situation finally catches up to him. He's under arrest. From there, the timeline moves into the fallout. Quagmire is forced to go door to door in his neighborhood, introducing himself as a sex offender. It's humiliating, but in context, it's also one of the only times the show directly labels his behavior for what it is. He's not just a pervy neighbor anymore. He's now legally recognized as the danger he's always been. Still, he has one last chance: court. In court, the only hope he has of avoiding prison time is to bring character witnesses who can convince the judge he's not a threat. Peter volunteers, and if you know Peter Griffin, you already know this is a disaster waiting to happen. His testimony includes a bizarre, medieval-sounding argument that basically suggests there's no such thing as underage once a girl hits a certain biological milestone. It's a reference to a fantasy show, but in front of a judge, it's beyond insane.
Mr. Quagmire was born on February 29th. Ergo, he's only 12.
He even tries to argue that because Quagmire was born on February 29th, he's technically only 12 years old. Legally, obviously, that means nothing. Morally, it's absurd. Peter's attempt to help does nothing except highlight how indefensible Quagmire's behavior is. The rest of the witnesses aren't any better. By the time they're done, Quagmire is slamming his head into the table, clearly realizing that his so-called friends are making things worse. So he takes the stand himself. That's when the show dives into his backstory. We learn that his dad was away a lot due to military service, and his mom, well, let's just say she had a hypersexual personality that the show exaggerates to a disturbing degree.
It's a boy, Mrs. Quagmire.
Ah, that's wonderful.
How do you feel?
Horny. Really horny. Could you put him back so I can push him out again?
The doctor announces that she's had a boy, and her immediate reaction is to say she feels extremely horny and wants to do it again right away. It's framed as over-the-top comedy, but it also quietly implies that Quagmire grew up in an environment where sex was loud, constant, and totally disconnected from boundaries. The episode uses this backstory to try to explain, though not excuse, why he turned out the way he did. The judge, however, doesn't buy any of it. Not Peter's nonsense defenses, not the warped life story, not the attempts to shift blame onto his upbringing. At the end of the day, Quagmire slept with a minor, and that's all that matters. The judge slams the gavel and hits him with a heavy sentence: 20 years in prison. For a brief moment in the timeline, it looks like Quagmire is actually going to face the consequences he's dodged for so long. Then his mother storms back into the story, clutching a newfound faith and begging to save him in Christ, a last-ditch emotional Hail Mary that even the judge refuses to buy. Quagmire actually reaches the prison doors, staring down 20 years that feel long overdue, until, in one of the show's coldest twists, everything flips at the very last second. The judge speeds back onto the scene and stops the process. It turns out Quagmire's mom slept with him. That's it. That's what it took. She traded her body to secure her son's freedom. It's transactional, deeply messed up, and it sends a very clear message in the context of this timeline. Quagmire escapes real accountability not because he's innocent, not because he's learned anything, but because someone else was willing to exploit themselves for his sake. Once you see the full timeline, the humor fades, exposing how animated comedy often hides dark truths behind catchphrases. Smash that subscribe button and stick around for more unsettling deep dives into the dark side of your favorite animated shows.